Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining our YouTube Live here, talking about digital transformation, and more specifically about Impact's Managed Digital Transformation Program. My name is Chris Mathy. I'm a Solutions Architect here at Impact Networking.
My name is Mitch, Sultana. I'm the Agile coach on the business applications team, and I head operations for MDX, that's Managed Digital Transformation.
My name is William Woods. I'm a BPA developer here at Impact, and I work on the solutions that Chris's team scopes out.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so I just want to give you guys a quick disclaimer here that we are in a live environment here at our support operations center here at Impact. So if you see people walking around in the background, they're doing their jobs. Also, if you guys have any questions throughout the live stream here, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, and we'll pick those up at the tail end of the conversation here. So the goals today, we really want to talk about what people generally think about digital transformation, what makes a bad project, what some of the risks are, and on the flip side, talk about what makes a good project and kind of how Impact is shifting their mindset when it comes to digital transformation. And really just talk about how to have these types of conversations, whether you're a salesperson at Impact, or if you're inside an organization thinking about this, you want to talk to your boss about it. Those are the main things I think we want to cover here today, guys.
Gotcha. So kind of to get started, what do people generally think about digital transformation?
Yeah, I think it's fairly a new concept and a new thing, so I think it's kind of a scary concept for some.
Yeah.
And they don't really know what to expect. And, with anything new or any kind of disruption comes with some fear and people scared of what's happening next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the head there. Any sort of digital transformation, whether we're talking about like, switching ERPs or introducing some sort of business process automation,
Right.
Anything like that, bringing on a new platform causes disruption, right?
Yeah.
Whether there's a bunch of value there, it's still going to introduce risk, it's going to cause disruption, it's going to change people's day-to-day workflows, right?
Right.
So yeah, people are generally, what we've seen is pretty resistant to that, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, there's a lot of risks. Speaking of risks, there was a study that came out in 2019 that of the $1.3 trillion spent worldwide on digital transformation, about 900 billion of that went towards failed initiatives. So 900 billion or about 70% of that was wasted, right? So let's talk about that, right? When we're talking about digital transformation, why do we see projects failing, right? What makes a bad project and what can slow down digital transformation?
Yeah, so I think one of the pillar stones of digital transformation is really getting the buy-in from the top down in a company. And that's just to translate the value to all the employees and showing them why this is going to be valuable to them.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is communicating the changes and what's going to be happening from the executive level all the way down to the company.
Yeah, change management is huge. Right?
Yes.
That's often the very first hurdle, right?
And then also understanding the value of what we're implementing within that and the changes that we're making and how it's going to benefit the end users.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of talking to the disruption point you were talking about earlier, Chris, like say I told you from now on you're going to do the milk and then the cereal. You look at me like I was crazy, right?
Wait, milk first?
Milk first. Not a big fan, right?
No.
First, you're looking at me like a crazy, and then secondly, that disruption, it really it disrupts the flow of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So you're uncomfortable with that, and that's hard for a lot of people to accept.
Yeah.
So imagine us doing that with your transformation or your digital transformation. Imagine us doing that with your technology and your solutions and the things that you use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that, right? I wouldn't want to put the milk first, right? So I think when it comes to disruption like this, right, we really need to, like you said, Mitch, communicate, right, on what's the value of doing this and make sure that the end users that are ultimately going to be testing things like that understand what the goal is, what the vision is, and even understand what the risks are and what our plan is to mitigate those risks, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about risks here, another big one that we see is technical debt, right? That can come in the form of multiple things, but what we've seen most often is, let's say, old outdated systems, right, that are generally working, right, but it may have limited integration capabilities. There may be a lot of manual processes kind of tied to that platform.
Right.
And we may be wanting to layer in like some new technology on top of that needs to integrate, right? But eventually we know we're going to have to shift, let's say that old ERP or something like that, right? So eventually we will have to cash in on that debt, right, and shift ERPs and rebuild all of our integrations, right?
Right.
So risks like that, if they go unchecked, they can often kill a project, right?
Right.
So that's one of the things we'll be talking about is clearing as much risk as we can inside of our kind of new approach to this, right?
Yeah.
There's a few other things, right? We've talked about platforms. We've talked about people a little bit, right? But we really look at it through the lens of those three pillars, right? People, platforms, and processes. Oftentimes, people can just look at platforms and focus on the value of what it's going to bring and promise, the entire world. But we really need to understand where we're at from a change management perspective, a digital maturity perspective inside of the organization, to make sure we're making the right foundational moves and making sure we're setting ourselves up for success, right?
Exactly, and kind of take a holistic approach and not just look at one problem,
Right.
and really look at the underlying problem so we can bring a full solution.
Right. Yeah. Because if we're just thinking tactically, right, we
Exactly.
really want to avoid that squeaky wheel getting the grease situation, right? We need to think strategic, and thinking tactically is what people generally do historically, but that's not the right way of doing it, and introduces a lot of risk.
Right.
So yeah, as we're talking about kind of thinking strategic versus tactical, right? What makes a good project, right? And how has Impact kind of shifted the mindset when it comes to digital transformation?
So yeah, I was just going to say that this kind of reminds me how Impact switched our model from a break-fix model to where we would implement solutions, and when they would break, we'd come in and fix them. Whereas we now switch to a managed service to where we're taking a holistic approach and figuring out the underlying issues,
Right.
and implementing technologies and softwares that really help the customer with their day-to-day operations. And
Right, because historically we would, just work tactically, right? That's how
Exactly.
everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
Our clients would say, hey, our AP department is drowning in paperwork, right? So you need to come in here and introduce some automation inside of their process to help them, right?
Yeah.
So there would be something that's broken, we'd come in and fix it, right? Without taking that strategic look and saying, is this even the right thing to do? right?
Exactly.
Do you have goals that you're trying to push towards, and does this help push towards those goals, right? So yeah, that's a huge piece of it, I think. What about when we're talking about individual solutions? What about kind of our shift in mindset there, specifically around our development methodology?
Yeah, so previously we were using the waterfall method, where we would develop a whole project and then present it to the client. And then we switched to an Agile methodology where we break down these very complex solutions into sprints. And we have 2 weeks of development, and then we showcase that to the customer.
Yeah.
And then we get their feedback after their testing, and then we move on to the next sprint with their feedback. So we can custom tailor that solution to them and make sure that they're able to use it to the
Right.
best of their abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that agile environment, we're able to push for a lot of transparency and openness within just kind of talking between the customers and ourselves. With the development team, we're able to kind of really get a good understanding of what the end users need in order for us to be able to drive to those goals and be able to make sure that the end users have what they need to perform their day-to-day businesses.
Yeah, exactly. And one other benefit is with the Agile methodology, it really puts us in a position where we can pivot, where if something changes and the client figures out that something that we're implementing isn't communicating well with their systems, we can change that and tailor it to make sure that it fits that good.
Yeah, that's huge. Like you said, we break it down into sprints, right?
Yeah.
Those sprints each have a goal, right? And when we have those sprint reviews, right, with the client, we go over what the goal was in the
Right.
last sprint, what we developed, we show what the value is, and then the most critical part is we get that feedback rapidly from the client. So Yeah, if we do need to pivot, we can course correct throughout the development process to make sure we're staying on course. But another huge piece of that is it makes those that are involved, stakeholders and end users that are doing testing, they get a ton of buy-in, right? Because they feel like they're part of the process too, which they definitely are.
Right.
And also one more is with doing it for a sprint by sprint basis is it's easier for us to discover impediments and clear those impediments.
Exactly.
Whereas with waterfall, when you're taking on the whole project at once, you don't really know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And with doing it by the step-by-step process and the open communication with the client, it's very easy to figure out those impediments and clear them and work as a team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I guess another thing we didn't cover per se is like kind of just understanding the milestones that we could deliver.
Yeah.
At the end of our sprints, the end users really get a opportunity to kind of see what the product looks like. They get to get their hands on it. They get to really interact with our applications and our solutions. And it makes all the difference for them in terms of their engagement levels.
Yeah. Absolutely. And on that whole note of the Agile methodology, Chris, have you seen benefits to using Agile and how it's influenced us when it comes to MDX?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we really did that kind of Agile development shift before we started on this managed digital transformation journey. And we really took a lot of those benefits and key pillars of the Agile methodology when we were developing our MDX program, right? Because if you think about it, when we break a project down into individual sprints, that are goal-driven, focusing on value, things like that, we're really just building a roadmap for that project, right?
Exactly.
So we wanted to take those tenets and kind of expand the scope to talk and focus on an entire organization's goals, and even taking into consideration like departmental goals, right? And seeing how those tie up to the organizational goals. And inside of that, like we had talked about, we can clear risks as early as possible. We can find out what foundational moves we need to make so that we're setting ourselves up for success. But then, like I had said earlier, not just from a platform perspective, but also see is there change management issues we need to clear, right? Is there high employee turnover, low satisfaction in the workforce at this organization? There's a whole host of things that we want to take a look at, like I said, to make sure that we're ensuring success moving forward, right?
Gotcha. So with everything as a whole, we kind of want to talk more about kind of like high level conversations. Chris, can you kind of go into detail of what your strategy is for that?
Yeah, talking about digital transformation, like you said, it's kind of a new topic, right?
Right.
So when we're having these conversations, like I had said earlier, if you're a sales rep or if you're someone at a company who you're seeing digital transformation come in, I would really challenge those to be bold and ask, hey, what are the goals that this is driving towards? Do we have a roadmap? Do we properly understand all the risks associated with this, right? Is our plan pivotable, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about roadmaps, tying it back to Agile methodology, the roadmap needs to pivot, right? Because the truth is that technology isn't always going to be set in stone moving forward. If you make a 5-year roadmap, it's not going to stick to that entire 5-year plan perfectly, right?
Right.
The only thing set in stone is the past, right?
Right.
And what we're seeing recently with new technologies like AI, or even a pandemic like COVID, it flips everything on its head, right? So we need to be able to pivot that roadmap rapidly. So yeah, when we're having these conversations, I would just challenge everyone to make sure that we're thinking strategic about this, and if we're not, we really need to shift our mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
And also be bold and push back where if a problem arises, really think about what are the underlying problems and really get to the root of it.
Exactly.
And I would say kind of with being bold, we would like to see a champion, someone from the organization that will really be able to kind of communicate your goals and values to the development team so we can really get an understanding of what we're trying to produce.
Yeah. So as we talk about this, I just want to remind you guys to throw any questions you may have in the chat. Yeah, when we're talking about building this roadmap, right, in digital transformation, there's a lot of really cool tools that we use inside kind of the assessment process when we're taking a look at an organization. And like we had mentioned earlier, it really starts with understanding where the company is at from a digital maturity perspective, right? We generally send out a questionnaire to a good subsection of the entire organization to understand where people fall from a people, platforms, and process perspective. Understand if there's change management issues that we need to take a look at. Really just kind of set our mindset going into actual interviews with departmental stakeholders and users to understand what their current processes are, what technologies they're using, how they integrate with each other or don't integrate with each other, right?
Right.
And then we really use all these tools to capture this data to ultimately build a roadmap. Like I had mentioned earlier, a long-term strategic roadmap that clears impediments, focuses on delivering value, right? One thing that can be hard to convey when we're just thinking tactically, right, is if we need to make a foundational move, right, that may not have a ton of value up front, but sets up that foundation for later projects to build upon to deliver great value, right? It can be hard to show that ROI to especially stakeholders that are really concerned about budgets and money, right? And hey, is there going to be ROI on this? We can do that with a long-term roadmap, right? We can show that, hey, this has, maybe the value isn't more so on an ROI perspective, but it's to build upon later. Right. We can show that inside of a roadmap. Where if you're just thinking tactically, they may not make that move because they don't see the long-term vision, right? And when we're talking about roadmaps here, we have another webinar coming up here soon with actually my boss, John Evans, the VP of Digital Transformation here at Impact. That's going to be at June 28th at 11 a.m. Central Time. The registration link should be in the description below, so feel free to check that out. And yeah, we really just want to open up the floor here, I think, to some questions that you guys may have. So I'll start with the first one here from Dorian. Which industries do you feel like need digital transformation the most?
That's kind of a trick question because within every industry, digital transformation can be applied. Yeah. Because we've really seen that technology and software can help automate, streamline process, almost everything. Us personally within Impact, we've worked with museums, trucking companies, law offices, property management. It's really all across the board. Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? It may feel like kind of a cop-out answer, right, where we say like, everyone can use it, right? But it really is the truth, right? Whether, when we're talking about digital maturity, we have a scale, right? Yeah. It goes from 1 to 6, right? And really the values of that scale don't really mean a whole lot, right? Whether you're, digital maturity is completely absent, right? Everything's paper-based, or whether you're at the very top where you're innovative inside of your space, like Amazon or Google or something, right? We really want to gauge a company where they're at and draw that line in the sand and say, hey, where do we want to move forward on this, right? So yeah, digital transformation and the managed digital transformation program can really be applied to anyone. And we know that because I can't think of one industry where technology and software is not used. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next question here from Andrew. What are some of the major pitfalls that contribute to a failed digital transformation initiative?
Wow. Well, you had stated some stats right at the beginning of this, and I'd say wasted capital for sure. Yeah. Because that can really be the lifeblood of any company. We need money to carry out the initiatives. Another big one is wasted time. Time is valuable for everybody, and especially when there is competitors within the landscape. Yeah. So that's a few.
Yeah, I think wasted time is a huge one, right? We really want to make sure that we're moving aggressively throughout the development process and throughout our roadmap, right? Because that's what we've seen historically, like you talked about, Will, with buy-in being an issue, communication being an issue. Projects can tend to drag out very long, right? Which not only hurts the customer, right? They waste a bunch of time and resources, but it also hurts the person, like Impact, doing the actual development time, right? We might become over budget, right? So really just communication, a strong strategy. If that's not in place, that's obviously one of the major pitfalls of a digital transformation initiative, right? Okay, and then lastly here we got from Eddie, what does full alignment look like in a digital transformation initiative? And how do you know when you have it?
Yeah, so I can talk to that
Sure.
a little bit. We recently just had a sprint review. A developer and I, Scott Gatos, he was able to kind of maneuver through a call where we had just showed the application for the first time. They had no idea what they were seeing, no idea what was on the app, and basically with our first sprint review, we were able to kind of show like our web pages, we were able to go through our pages and kind of show like user permissions, and they absolutely loved it. We were able to open the floor, and there was questions and feedback, and there was comments just bouncing all over the place, and we were able to see an environment where from top down, everyone had the initial goal in mind of making productivity a huge priority.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to not only our strategic methodology, but also our development methodology, right? That we're having those sprint reviews. We're getting eyes on the project as soon as we can to get that feedback, get that buy-in from the users to really make them feel like they're a part of that development process. And not only that, but from a strategic point, we want to make sure we're getting that in front of the right people to test. Right.
Yes, exactly.
So full alignment really starts at the beginning. Understand who that initiative is going to touch. And making sure we're getting eyes on as soon as we can so that we can course correct, make sure we're staying on path.
Absolutely.
Okay, lastly here from Dirk, can you expand on your approach to change management processes and how you influence people?
Great question.
Yeah. So I can touch on that a little bit. Like I said, it really kind of starts with that questionnaire inside of the assessment process and understanding, hey, which departments might have change management issues, and focusing on the people. I think that's really where we start with a lot of these MDX engagements. Go ahead.
And also finding those key players.
Yeah.
When we go into a organization, we really want to find out who can make those major moves and help us implement these solutions, because they can be big projects, and it's definitely a buy-in from both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know one thing we commonly do when it comes to change management, like we had mentioned earlier, it's all about making sure those users understand the value, understand what the goals are, right? And ultimately understanding what the risks are, right? Understanding that we have a plan in place to take care of these risks. These are what they are. One thing that can be huge for change management is surfacing proper analytical data, right? Mm-hmm. Being transparent as to what the budgets may be, what KPIs that we have in place,
right?
To really give those end users, again, a lot of buy-in to make sure that we're tackling those change management issues.
Yeah. Also, one key process to it is our road mapping, because the proper planning and structure to the whole engagement is really key.
Yeah.
Planning when you can get those low wins or easy wins, and then plan those more tactical strategic moves at the end is key.
Yeah, having a roadmap that's transparent and inspectable by everyone involved in the process is huge.
Yes.
And I'd say from a development standpoint, your first couple of sprints are your best sprints. You want to be able to continuously show improvement. You want to be able to hit your milestones. You want to be able to really make sure that the users understand the products and what they're getting out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and show that value within each sprint. Yeah, great point, Will.
It really just boils down to we want to show that we're being strategic, right? That we have a plan in place, because oftentimes, end users, where there might be a change management issue, they may feel like the organization is just throwing money at the problem, throwing technology at the problem, and hoping it sticks, right? Because like we talked about, that's historically how companies may operate when it comes to digital transformation, and they may know and have seen firsthand the failures when it comes to that and how painful that can be. So we really want to show that we're taking a different approach here, and we're managing it in the right way.
This also goes to a point that I think Chris said earlier, where some employees might not feel like they've been heard, and through the set of tools that Chris laid out earlier, we kind of fix that by having interviews with all the key players and making sure we hear their struggles and stuff, and we address those head on.
Absolutely. Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Again, we touched on, what is digital transformation? How do people generally think about it? What makes a bad project and what makes a good project? Kind of what our shift in methodology is around that to ensure success, right? And then ultimately, we touched on how to have these conversations and some of the tools that we use. Again, just want to remind you guys about that road mapping session. The link is in the description below to register for that. We're going to be looking forward to that here in the future. So thanks again for your time, and we really enjoyed the conversation here.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
thank
was
you.
fun. Thank you.